So let's now move on to the final two segments here, which are probably the two segments that my audience is most interested in talking about. And we will start out with Star Wars before we get to Marvel and wrap up the announcements from the panel. Thank you guys again. If you're still here, sticking around all the way through, or if you just watch individual segments, as always, I'll be posting these as individual segments in the coming days on the YouTube channel. Just keep leaving comments, engaging, and I will be sure to respond to all of them. Interestingly, and I suppose we'll reiterate this with Marvel as well, we did not get a lot from Star Wars and Marvel. And for Star Wars, I suppose, and we'll talk about my thoughts about that with Marvel. Star Wars, I think that's okay. Because it's because of one reason in particular. Because they've been overpromising over the past 5 years. They've promised us so many different projects that sound amazing. And yet the next film that's coming out wasn't even on the slate of projects that came out, or that they announced last time, which the three films they announced last time were Dawn of the Jedi. I guess this is one. I should take that back, because the three films they announced were Dawn of the Jedi with James Mangold, which I really, really hope comes out. That would be so cool. Then they announced a Rey movie / something like a bridge, I guess, to an episode 10, or maybe even episode 10, who even knows. And then a Dave Filoni Mando film, which maybe that's what this film has evolved into. Maybe. But who knows how many of the characters, we'll talk about some of the characters that they announced will appear in this film. But yeah, I mean, it's, this is sort of a film that wasn't even on the radar the last time they made announcements. And let's not to mention Taika Waititi's film. Sean Levy is still in development of a film. Apparently, Kevin Feige's film is dead. There was a Rian Johnson trilogy that was dead. I believe Benioff and Weiss had a trilogy at one point. Patty Jenkins had Rogue Squadron. So it's just been a disaster. And so in that regard, I'm actually okay with them just talking about what they have in store. Would I have liked some announcements about Ahsoka Season 2 and perhaps the direction that they were going with Baylan Skoll, for example? Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. He did a fantastic job in that series, even though I didn't love the series as a whole. Would I have liked to have heard some announcements about that? For sure. And would I maybe have liked to have seen maybe an announcement for another animated series or something like that? Sure. But I think to focus in on the projects that are pretty much in production and in development and ready to be released, I think is fine. I think it's totally fine. So for Star Wars, while initially I was expecting a little bit more, I also was like, if you're only gonna talk about what you have ready, and it does, fingers crossed, knock on wood, right here. It does look like Mandalorian and Grogu is finally going to go into development. It would look like we're going to finally get a Star Wars film, I believe in 2026, which is still a long ways away. But anyways, I'm really hoping and really excited about that, because we haven't had Star Wars since 2019, and 2019 was Rise of Skywalker. And even before that was Last Jedi, and that split the fandom. You guys know my thoughts on Last Jedi. I love The Last Jedi, but not a lot of people do. And that's totally fine. That's totally your right to. But the Star Wars fandom has just been with Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and Acolyte. It's just been a mess. So to get a feature film that will hopefully be taking the best parts of Mandalorian and Baby Yoda / Grogu is exciting. So I guess since I'm talking about it here, let's just start out with Mandalorian and Grogu and then talk about the two TV shows that they talked about. So Mandalorian and Grogu, we got the logo. Looks, it's Mandalorian and then underneath and Grogu in the same font. Great. Really not a whole lot. I think they're going into production and shooting it pretty soon. Maybe early next year, if not late this year. But we got, I think, two notable announcements from it. Number one is that Zeb, who appeared at the end of Mandalorian Season 3, which I think a lot of us would agree was not our favorite season of the show. It certainly wasn't mine. I think it was definitely on par with something like, an Ahsoka or Book of Boba Fett even, or an Acolyte in that Obi-Wan kind of vein. Definitely not up to par. But we did get to see live action Zeb from Rebels, and it seems like he will be coming back for Mandalorian and Grogu. How much of the rest of the crew will be showing up, and whether or not this is actually going to be that big post episode 6, pre episode 7 team up movie with Thrawn that we were promised, who knows? Who knows if we'll even get that movie at all anymore, or if it'll just be a TV show. I don't know. I'm assuming they're still aiming for something like that. Maybe Ahsoka season 2 or 3 will be that big team up. I don't know. Maybe it'll just be Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Grogu and Boba Fett and everyone. I don't know. Maybe Boba Fett will show up in the film. Who knows? But we got an announcement at any rate that Zeb will be appearing in the film, which is, interesting. Maybe Hera will show up. Who knows? And then the other thing, which I think is kind of interesting, I don't know if I love this, and I'll talk about why, because it may not seem obvious why I don't like this, is that the Razor Crest will also make an appearance again, will return. And look, I love the Razor Crest. I think it's a fantastic design. It's so iconic, and it's so rare in these days, post George Lucas, to make ships that are as iconic as some of the original ships and designs and creatures. The Razor Crest was one of them, which is so interesting because it's a gray ship, doesn't look that special, but it captured our imaginations immediately. But what's interesting about this franchise is that they seem to be a little too reactionary for my liking. And what I mean by that is that if you remember from the first film, the first couple seasons, we had this big whole thing about Mandalorian and Grogu, them bonding and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of season 2, Mando had to let Grogu go to Luke Skywalker. But then fast forward to Book of Boba Fett, and it's almost like, they panicked and they were like, uh-oh, we're trying to make Mandalorian season 3, and we realized we can't just make a Mandalorian show, God forbid. Which I don't think is true at all. I think they totally could have made just a standalone Mandalorian film, and Grogu could have come back in that big team up or whatever, whatever. But no, they decided, we need him back. We need him to come back because fans won't like the show if he doesn't come back, which I don't think that's true. Perhaps the numbers would have gone down, but if you just told a good story, I think the numbers would have been fine anyways, especially for season 4, because after how disappointing season 3 was, if they're even going to do season 4, or this movie. Perhaps if season 3 was really good with just Mando, and then you announced he was coming back for the movie, could have been even better, for that. But at any rate, I digress. So I don't know. I could be totally just, paranoid and spiraling a little bit. But it seems like the Razor Crest coming back as well is another one of these. Oops, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have blown up a ship in season 2. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I like the N1 fighter enough. But obviously we love the Razor Crest more, and it seems almost like, hey, they like that more. We should go back on it. I could be totally reading too far into it. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. So yeah, there is Mandalorian and Grogu, and honestly, no news at this point is good news. Let's just get this film out and get Star Wars back on the big screen. Now, as for the two shows, we'll talk about Andor first, and then we'll finish up with Skeleton Crew in the trailer. So let's talk about Andor. Andor season 2 should be coming out sometime early next year, maybe mid next year. Andor was the one series that felt like it was the most universally acclaimed by fans of Star Wars. It didn't have that traditional lightsaber combat or anything like that that we were hoping to see from shows like Acolyte and Ahsoka and whatnot. But it really did a great job of being a spy espionage thriller kind of show. It's a show that I do really need to rewatch because I do think it benefits, that this is the kind of show that would benefit greatly from a binge. Because yeah, it's like sometimes seeing it week to week, I was a little bit, it didn't have those kind of natural hooks to keep me going between episodes. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Like, it's just totally a subjective thing here on my end. But I enjoyed the show immensely. I think Stellan Skarsgård's speech obviously is amazing. I also think that space battle that he had with his ship was also quite underrated, honestly. And so I'm really excited about that. We did get a few announcements for this, a couple of which I think we knew. And a couple which are, I think actually most of these we knew. So we'll just kind of run through these and then we'll talk about Skeleton Crew. We got confirmation this takes place over 4 years. And I believe the last scene we heard from Tony Gilroy, who is the showrunner of this series, and who did a lot on Rogue One as well. I believe a while ago we got confirmation that the last scene of Andor season 2 will basically pick up right before Rogue One begins with Cassian. So that's cool. And I also think we did know that this film was this series was going to take place over a longer period of time. 4 years is the confirmation now. And I think what's happening, because I think it's going to be 12 episodes, and I think it's like every 3 episodes takes place over a couple years or a year or something like that. We'll have to see how that works out because obviously the first season was much more linear. It had little 3-episode arcs, but it was much more linear in that respect anyways. but yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how that works out. I'm curious. I'm sure that they're going to pull it off, but I just want to see how they're going to do it. And then also a couple confirmations that I think were pretty obvious, if not had already been confirmed. Not Grand Admiral. What is he? Admiral Krennic? General Krennic? I forget his title, but Krennic, played by the wonderful Ben Mendelsohn, is coming back in the series. Duh, obviously. Who knows? Maybe Tarkin shows up. I don't know. But these kinds of, they're not cameos, I would say. I think they're going to be big supporting players in the sense that, not that they're going to be in the series for 90% of it, but their presences will loom large because it matters, right? What the Empire is doing. And so I think Krennic will be important in the series, so that's really exciting. Love Ben Mendelsohn. And then Saw Gerrera, Forrest Whitaker will also be back as well. That totally makes sense as well. So yeah, really excited about Andor Season 2. Can't wait for that. And finally, we have the next installment in the Star Wars franchise, which is Skeleton Crew, coming out, I believe, on December 3rd, 2024. And we got our first trailer for it. So what we had heard, this is going to be helmed by John Watts, or showrun by John Watts, who directed 3 of my favorite MCU films of all time, the 3 Spider-Man films. He's amazing. I can't wait to see what he does with this show. What they were going for, he said, was something like Stranger Things meets Goonies meets Amblin kind of thing, with the kids. And yeah, I mean, this is it's definitely led by kids. He said it's not going to be really kiddie or goofy in that way, but it's going to be led by kids on this adventure with Jude Law as a Jedi, which is a revelation in the trailer. And I watched the trailer. I definitely think that some of the visuals are really interesting. Does not look cheap. It looks pretty real, and all that kind of stuff. And the adventure that they're promising seems interesting as well. Who knows? I wouldn't be mad at all if it's just pretty much self-contained, because I know it also takes place between episodes 6 and 7. It's in that time span as well. I wouldn't, be surprised if they show up later if this is a successful show. But I also would not mind at all if this was just pretty much entirely self-contained. That being said, my main takeaway from this trailer is that in my opinion at least, because the story might be amazing and then I might forget all about this, but from my first impression of the trailer, it seems like my enjoyment of the show and how successful it's going to be is because it has a space adventure kind of feel. It has that kind of whimsy about it that you love from those Spielberg films, kind of with the kids. But I think it's really going to hinge, as all of those films kind of do, on how well the child actors do. I didn't get a good sense of that in this trailer. I think there are some lines that you kind of go, it seems a little bit just like a kid acting, but other lines seem pretty fine as well. It's going to be interesting to see how that alien, kid who talks in basic / English, how that plays out, because it might come off as really goofy looking. I don't know. I hope not. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested. For sure. If it captures that Stranger Things vibe, because Stranger Things obviously show with kids leading the way, but what made that show spectacular, other than the story as well and the visuals and whatnot, were the fact that Finn Wolfhard and Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, and Noah Schnapp, as well as Millie Bobby Brown, really carried that show in the first season and brought it to success in that regard. So I'm hoping for the same for this particular show, but we'll have to see. So those were all the announcements for the Star Wars panel. Let me know in the comments down below if you were disappointed by any of the announcements, or if you were disappointed by lack of announcements, or if you're excited about anything that's being announced here, as we head into our final segment of D23.